our story, this is our song, praising our Savior all the day long. This is our story, this is our song, praising our Savior all the day long. As we finish our time of telling stories, today is the day when I have chosen to tell your story. The story of Independence Christian Church, located in Independence, Kentucky. It is a story which is yours, but it is becoming mine over time, and thus it is our story. With Carol as a city council member in your midst, you may already know, I'm sure she's well educated you as I call her out, that the area of Independence has more than doubled in size from 2000 to 2010 census. That the population in 2010 and now to 2014 is around 26,000 to 27,000 people. Statistics show that Independence, if you're reading on a page, is mostly white, and that the median income per household is $22,000 more than the state average. But at the same time, it is estimated that at least 10% of your population lives below the poverty line. So what do these numbers mean? For those of you who are living here, they probably start to help make some sense. That you live in an area outside of Cincinnati that was affordable, with a decent school system. People moved here over the last 10 to 15 years to have a small town feel with big town advantages. And they also moved here to have a slightly easier commute than driving through Florence on I-75. You have a community here of busy people who have not lived here their whole lives. They are not connected in the same way that people in Independence were connected 25 years ago. Those who have lived here most of their lives were a different type of busy than the current ones who have moved here. They were more farming and small town type of busy than many of those who are here now. They go into the city and then come back. Thus you are a suburb, a bedroom community. Now, as I did some research into your churches and your faith, you do have some mega churches nearby, but statistics show, like I said, that mega churches aren't really growing. They're just convenient in timing for busy people in a busy world. The other churches in your area are actually mostly conservative. They're Baptist, Catholic, or non-denominational affiliations. And I do have to admit, I found this fascinating. You don't even have in this town that mainline church row that a lot of small towns have. That mainline church row that has your Methodists, your Presbyterians, your Disciples, your Lutherans, and Episcopalian churches all within a 1-mile radius. You don't have that here. You don't stand next to each other and work together in the same way that many of those towns work together. Because to the average person, those churches aren't all that different. So what I came to discover as I was researching the other churches in your area is that you may be one of 2 churches in this entire area that would actually allow a female to be your leader. And that's fascinating in a community that is filled with families and educated professionals in 2016. And I'm not 100% sure about these details and information. A lot of them are just spending time on the internet and websites, really trying to search and seek out what is in your community. But it did show and teach me that as we learn about our story, that this church may have more to share than we even realized from the beginning. You see, during the time of growth in your community from 2000 to 2010, Independence Christian Church had 3 very different ministers come across your path. And with them, as your story matters, some difficult and even some interesting stories. Now, I think it's important to note the difficult stories. Every church has them, every single one. The question, like most of the questions that happen in life, is how does your church respond? And I wonder if you are able to respond in the ways of love and to move forward through those difficult times. If we want to make sure to have a story of the future, we can't let the difficult stories win over the good stories. because I've also discovered in the last few weeks the amazing stories that this church has. And you have some really great stories. Historically, you began as a church in 1881. You were the Union Church. The first church was shared among several denominations. You were ecumenical from the beginning. The building then that church began in was struck by lightning in 1885. So it took 13 years for the church to regroup with 29 members. In 1898, it restarted, and thus it was Presbyterian until 1910. And like most things over the next 3 years, due to a shift in financial interest, the trustees began incorporating with what we now call the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in Kentucky. And so since that time in 1913, you've had 34 pastors, and I make 35. You may also know that the building you are currently sitting in will be 50 years old next year, that the red carpet is the original carpet from 50 years ago, and there are still original windows from the previous building in the basement. But as you know, and as we will continue to discuss, buildings and pastors are part of the story, but luckily they are not the heart of the story, because the heart of the stories of our faith and our ministries and are called by God come from the people. It comes from the conversations that happen over lunches and the notes that are passed to each other through a sermon. It comes from reaching out beyond these walls and doing mission work together and having conversations of faith when we are together. The reputation I actually knew prior to my interactions directly with you was a positive one throughout the region. It included a family, the Cooks, who successfully raised 4, mostly faithful, people in a small church. You were small but family-oriented church, who was actually in some ways beating the odds. Because in many churches, the adults do not know the names of the children. They may know them by sight. That's so-and-so's granddaughter. They go with that family. But here I've discovered that really isn't the case. Most of you sitting here know Madison and Sky's names. And that intergenerational way of living has become really rare in our world. The church is one of the last places for important intergenerational conversations outside of families. And yet it is so powerful. It's powerful enough to keep people faithful for life. It's powerful enough to even make a minister, a good one, which can also be rare these days, but I didn't say that, so I might have to edit that out of the video part. But you actually ordained within the last 2 years one of the highest quality pastors that I have seen in a long time. And Reverend Kevin, spent some time sharing his stories and experience with me. And of course, he shared the importance of Miss Lucy in his life. So this is what he says. I got to know Miss Lucy very well through our many Sundays in the nursery together. She would share stories about her family, and I would share stories about mine. She would tell me about her children and the things they were doing, and I would tell her about the argument that my brothers or sisters and I had probably just gotten into that morning. Over the months and years, we developed a deep friendship. She would take me out to lunch after church and let me pick the restaurant. She would bake things for the youth bake sale at church only to buy them back at a much higher price just to support the activities we were trying to do. One time, I had the opportunity to go on a trip to New York and D.C. with other youth in the state, and Miss Lucy made sure to give me a card on Sunday mornings with plenty of spending money for the trip. While Miss Lucy was always supportive of everything that any of us did in the church, there was a special bond that she and I shared. She was proud to claim me as her own. You should be proud that this church claims people as their own. And it is sometimes very hard to see. Yes, there are things that need to be updated. Yes, there are things that need to be rebooted. Yes, there are stories that are sometimes difficult to share. But your story actually shows that you are doing a lot of things right. It's 2016. You shouldn't be surprised that Sometimes church feels a little off-center, but most churches are a little off-center. Most of life is a little off-center. When in the history of that have we not been off-center? In fact, as I read your church history in 1902, Clyde M. Wilson wrote, "From the beginning it has been little, but a struggle for existence. But we are proud to know that we have existed, and trust that in the future we shall find a smoother path than in the past. We think we can safely say that the spirituality of the members has grown considerably faster than the building. And we hope and pray that it is only the beginning." Think about that quote. I find it comforting that 114 years ago, some of the same images and phrases and problems that I've heard people say at this church about size, being small, being spiritual, quality people, 114 years ago, you were saying the same thing. And the church wasn't finished. I have to be honest, coming in, I didn't know what to expect from this church. But I have come to believe over the past few weeks that the story of this church is not finished. Did you hear the music today? Have you heard the music happening this week? Have you seen the children that are coming forward and the insight that they have? Have you heard the stories that we shared? Unless you choose to be finished, this church isn't. I watched an amazing ministry at the food pantry on Friday. You serve meals to those who need it. You are doing God's work. Historically, this church has had people with a spirituality that grows even faster. God seems to work here even when things may go astray. God is working. Have you not seen? Have you not heard? You see, my goal over the past few weeks as we've started to get to know each other is not just to share stories with you, but to find ways for you to be able to share the stories. It's like when someone says you cannot really love someone else until you love yourself first. If you in the pews are not passionate, excited, and moved by the stories in this place and all its forms, then we cannot move forward with a strong foundation. We must be able to tell the stories. We must be so excited about it that we share it with our neighbors and our coworkers and our Facebook friends. We share it on Snapchat. We even share it with the Zumba people downstairs and the Taekwondo. We tell our coworkers, we are doing amazing things at our church. We know an amazing God. We love Jesus Christ. We are reaching to the ends of the world, and we're reaching directly within our community. And we must know that the Spirit moves through us. We must pray for it. But it is a we. It's not me. It's a we. And it doesn't, like I said, take many. Just a few that believe in that we. So can you share the story? Are you excited, as I am, by the food pantry, the rummage sale, the community dinners? Are you excited about the worship service, the at-home options? Can you share the stories of the past and celebrate with the enthusiasm, the transformation of what God continues to do over and over with the future of this church? These are the stories that provide the creativity to move forward. And whether you realize it or not, this little church is actually way ahead of the game. In some ways, you have already been to the cross. You've had to mourn some difficult situations. And now you get to live the stories of resurrection and rebirth. And while those are not easy processes, just ask the apostles who had to do that. It is one where we are called to share the good news and the good parts of the story. So do you want to be a part of God's story? Do you want others to be a part of God's story? Have you not seen? Have you not heard? Have you not been told? Are you willing to share all ages, all races, all sexualities, all economic struggles, and like I said, even the Zumba class downstairs? And my prayer every day is that you say yes. Yes, you know. Yes, you have heard. Yes, you want to share. Yes, you want to do God's work, because it is exciting when it is done and when you witness it and are a part of it. I want you to know that you have a strong foundation for a good thing here. But you only have it if you believe in it. It can't be just my story. It can't be just a few stories, but it must be our story. You must be willing to share it. You may even need to be willing to sing it. This is our story. This is our song. Praising my Savior all the day long. This is our story. This is our song. Praising our Savior all the day long. I invite those who would like to be part of our story to come forward at this time.
Every week in our church, we take up an offering.